It's one thing to know you need a boundary. Like, I mean, most of us spend our lives thinking, oh, God, I probably should have set a boundary with that person. But it's another thing to communicate it and enforce it. The first rule of setting a boundary: be clear, be direct. This can be a big adjustment if you're used to hinting or being indirect, because it sounds harsh when you're direct, you think, but clarity is your friend. People cannot honor a boundary that they don't understand or that they don't even know exists. So you have to use simple, specific language. You don't have to lecture or justify extensively. In fact, over-explaining weakens your message. I've talked about that in people pleasing. We are not going to over-explain when we set a boundary, okay? When you set a boundary, it is short, complete sentences, and no explanation is needed usually. They might push for it, that's part of the pushback, but we're going to talk about how to handle that. Just state the boundary or the limit calmly. For example, instead of saying something like, well, I'm kind of busy and have a lot going on, so I don't know, I don't think I can, but maybe later, That's not a boundary. Listen to that. That's a doormat. That's like, oh, please tell me what to do with myself because I have no idea. We're going to work on fixing that. So instead of that, you say something like, I won't be able to take that on. Did I explain any further? No. I didn't explain why. I didn't talk about all the things that I have going on. I didn't talk about all the stresses in my mind. I just said, short to the point, I won't be able to take that on. You can add a polite thank you or a sorry that's appropriate, like a thank you for asking, but I have to say no this time. Remember, we don't apologize for the boundaries though. I'm sorry I'm going to miss out on that. It sounds like a good time, but I just don't have the time in my schedule. Notice that you don't always have to include a reason. You don't. Sometimes we over-explain because we feel that we owe them a justification, but no is a complete sentence. This is extra hard for people that were in abusive relationships or in narcissistic relationships to handle because you have had to explain yourself in every degree all the time for such a long time in every conversation. You have to end up explaining yourself like for things that have nothing to do with the conversation that you're having because it gets so derailed. So that's a programmed response, and I want to help you unprogram that. That over-explaining because you never felt heard, you never felt validated, that's where that's coming from. We're going to validate ourselves. We're not looking for external validation anymore, so we don't have to explain ourselves over and over or over-explain ourselves. Jesus said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. That's in Matthew. So while the context is about oaths that he's talking about, it applies here. Be straightforward is what he's saying. If you start giving long excuses, some people will see it as an opening to negotiate or to argue, or like a narcissist to attack you from every single angle they see. And then all of a sudden the boundary that you were mentioning is totally off course, not anywhere near the conversation, and you're all of a sudden defending something you did forever ago. You're defending your character, you're defending your tone, you're defending your timing, you're defending like that you do care about them. It just becomes this whole thing, right? So they might say something like, oh, you can't because you have a doctor's appointment? Well, then just reschedule it. See, you got yourself in a pickle there. If you would have just said, I can't, but I hope you have a good time. Thank you for asking. Period. No explanation. They wouldn't have even known your information to then use it against you or open it up for a negotiation. When you say, thank you, but I can't, I have a doctor's appointment and I have this to do and that to do and I have this on my mind and I have to focus on this, blah, 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 blah. Then they have all those little openings, all those little places to seep in and start to kind of derail you. And then all of a sudden you're in defense mode and then you really lost your place on setting your boundary. So if you keep it brief and general, I have other commitments. It's less arguable. The toxic person's way of derailing and taking your long explanation as a multifaceted way to attack you or derail the conversation is real. And this is a way to stop that from happening. Every time you try to stand up for yourself, you end up just rolling over for this reason. And by the way, that's not an accident. They know what they're doing. It's a strategy. It's a control strategy. It's a manipulation strategy. Number 2, I'm going to give you a really good tool for this. And this is a really great marriage thing. We do this in the Gottman method in marriage counseling. And it goes something like this. I feel about what and I need. Okay? So you're using I statements for the boundaries about the behavior. When addressing a boundary about how someone treats you, you have to phrase it from your perspective. We're not talking about what they're doing wrong. We're just talking about how it's affecting us and what we need. Okay. For example, it would say something like, I feel disrespected when you tease me about my weight. I need that to not be brought up in conversation. It hurts. Or something like, I need some quiet time in the evenings to decompress. Let's talk in the morning instead. I'll be able to give you my full attention then. Or for something more confrontational, you can say something like, I will not continue this conversation if the volume remains loud. I will be present and speak with you when we are both calm. Notice the structure of that. It often helps to mention behavior and the effect on you and then the boundary. Because then it's not saying just stop doing that. It's like, hey, this is affecting me this way. Here's a chance to show up for me and care about me because this is a negative impact on me. This is what would have a positive impact on me. So I feel about this, therefore I need this. Your needed change, and then what happens if the change doesn't happen? So simply just, I need this or I will do that. When I'm interrupted, I lose my train of thought. I need to finish my sentences before taking questions. That clearly communicates what's needed. And it's really important not to apologize for the boundary. It's okay to be courteous, but don't apologize for having a boundary. Avoid saying something like, I'm sorry, I'm just so busy, I'm a terrible friend for saying no, blah, 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 and you condemn yourself verbally to this other person, which gives an opening, and also it's just not true, and it makes you sound like you don't actually believe in your own boundaries, which the whole point of setting them is because you're believing in yourself now. You're not a terrible friend for having limits. You're a human, and you have limits. Surprise! So no need to apologize for that. You have a right to have boundaries. You have a right to have limits. You have a right to put your needs before others in a sense that it's going to help you to function better in your life. You have a right to all those things. Remember the basic human rights list that I told you in my people-pleasing video? You got to remember that. So you can also empathize with their disappointment without rescinding your boundary. Empathy is really powerful here, especially for those of us that feel like saying no is mean, which is most of us. And that's why we are watching a boundary video because we struggle setting it because we don't want to be mean. So you can say something really empathetic like, I know this might be disappointing and I wish I could help, but I can't. I didn't explain why I couldn't. I didn't go into some long, treacherous, like, I feel your feelings and all of this. I just said, I know it's disappointing and I do wish I could help, but I can't. That's both firm and kind. So when you're doing this, it's important to keep your tone firm and neutral. It won't come naturally at first. When you first start setting boundaries, you're probably going to be all when you talk because you're nervous. It might come out a little angry and harsh at first because you're just like anxious to get it out. And that's really normal too. But it's important that as you work more in your boundary setting, that you work on having that really neutral tone, calm and neutral. So practice saying your boundary out loud. You practice it in a mirror or with a friend, until you get that confident tone. You can practice this. Our words can be right, but if our voice is wavering or trailing off, or you sound like you're doubting yourself or like you're questioning yourself, people might not take you seriously. It's because they're gonna like tap into that and be like, especially the narcissist. If you don't sound pretty sure and calm about it, they're gonna push you on it. Aim for that tone that's calm, clear, and kind. It's not angry unless it's an extreme situation and it's requiring sternness, like stopping abuse. I will not tolerate you calling me names anymore. I will be leaving the room when you do call me names. That's firm. It's not ugly, I didn't yell, but it's firm. It's a lot different tone than, I really like that we talk in the evenings, but I do not have 2 hours to talk every night. How about we talk on Tuesdays from this time to this time? 2 different tones, right? So if you're struggling with this, imagine that you're speaking on behalf of someone that you love. If you have kids, it's a really great thing to think about. For example, you'd be pretty clear and firm if you had to protect your child from harm, right? Like you get that mama bear comes out and you would set that boundary pretty easily with someone else. So now do it for yourself. You're a child of God. You're worthy of the same protection. So you've got to channel that protective energy for yourself. Because I bet maybe when you're growing up, nobody did. And that's why you weren't modeled boundaries. That's why you weren't taught boundaries. But you can be that person now. And you deserve that. That inner child in you deserves that. She's still there. He's still there. And they need that. They need someone to advocate for them. You have to be that advocate. So being specific about that request or the limit. Vague boundaries don't work. They don't. Saying, I need more respect from you, well, that's up for interpretation. What's respect to you versus what's respect to the other person? It's too fuzzy. This is my boundary. This is what I need. If that's not going to happen, this is what I'm going to do. It's about ourselves, remember? The person knows exactly what behavior is expected of them when you're really clear like that, and what consequence will happen if the behavior isn't developing. So sometimes you may have to state the consequences of violating the boundary. Sometimes you won't. We don't just run around and just tell everybody consequences all the time. That's not what we want. But if your boundary is don't yell at me, you can add, and probably will have to add, if you continue to yell, I'm going to leave. I'm going to end this conversation. I will not participate in this anymore. Consequences aren't threats. That's an important thing too. That's why the consistency of the enforcement is so important. So it doesn't sound like you're just threatening all the time. We're not just threatening. We're not going to run around and threaten things. They're the action that you'll take to keep the boundary, and then you have to take it. You have to take it. So whatever consequence you set, be ready to follow through. It's important. It's not, if you yell, I'll yell back. That's retaliation, not a boundary. It's, if you yell, I'll walk away. So remember that we can't control others, but we can control how we respond and what we stick around for. So by stating your response ahead of time, you're giving them a clear choice. And that's really important because that shows you some true character about someone. That helps you have some discernment about that person and that relationship. When you give them a choice, I need you to show up for me like this. I need you to not call me names. I need you to love me. What do they choose? What do they choose? And it's not you doing a bad thing if you walk away from that, by the way. A narcissist will turn that on you and they'll say, oh, see, now you run away. Oh, see, you always threaten with leaving. That hurts my abandonment wounds. Well, you calling me a bunch of names is doing a whole lot of damage to me, and you don't seem concerned about that. And I'm giving you a choice in this moment to stop doing it. So let's do a mini exercise, okay? A mini scenario, and I'll craft a boundary statement. So there's a friend, let's just use a friend example, that you love, and she calls you every night to vent about her problems for an hour. And you want to be there for her, right? But you're drained, and it's affecting your family and your family time and your mental health. And you realize, man, I really have got to start setting a boundary around these calls because she's doing it every night now. And I feel really guilty if I don't pick up the phone, or I have to lie and make up an excuse. It's that whole thing I talked about earlier. If you see that name on the phone, I talked about this in the how you know to set boundaries. You see a name and it makes you have negative feelings, a boundary needs to be set. So a possible boundary statement would be something like, I care about you and I value our friendship. I want to give you my full attention when we talk. But lately our calls in the evenings have been pretty long and it's hard for me to manage. So I have to set a limit. Let's plan to talk a couple times a week instead of every night, and I can set aside 30 minutes for you. That way I can also have time to recharge and take care of things here. I hope you understand. Now that's a pretty in-depth one. That's for a friend that we definitely care about the relationship. We definitely aren't trying to set hard boundaries like with an abuser. It's someone that we're just trying to build a bridge with and get them to understand our point of view. So remember that started with affirmation. So because this is a relationship that you want to keep strong, you're very empathetic towards that person. Like, I want to answer this. I want to be here for you. And then it states the problem. Calls have been really long and hard for me to manage. And then it sets the boundary. I can do a couple times a week instead of every night, and I can do it for 30 minutes. And I would go a step further and set specific days and specific times. I would be like, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'd love to talk at 6:30, and I've got 30 minutes to do that. And then it ends with a hopeful, friendly tone, of course. So depending on the friend, you might adjust the tone. If she's likely to feel guilty, like you don't want her to feel bad, then you just reassure her that you still care. Like, no, I don't want you to not call me. I promise that's not what I'm saying. But I want to be present for the conversations. I want to be able to really be there for you. And I can do that better if it's on these days and at this time and for this amount of time. So it's a good thing. And if she's a different kind of friend who's likely to get angry, you still stick to it. But perhaps drop your explanation a little bit. Like, I won't be able to chat every night anymore. I'm swamped. I need my evenings free. Let's catch up twice a week and keep it a little shorter. Remember your boundary script formula. Like, when this happens, in this situations, I feel this or I need that. So from now on, I will this. So I hope you can respect that. It was a great ending to that. I hope you feel that I still care about you and that I value this relationship. I just want to be able to be present with you. And I can't do that every single night. So I hope that makes you feel a little bit more confident in how to set a boundary. And in the next video series, we're going to discuss what to expect when you start setting boundaries and how to handle pushback and guilt and manipulation. It will come, especially with those narcissistic or toxic people in your life. So I'm going to have a whole video on how to handle pushback, guilt, and manipulation. Be sure to subscribe so that you can check it out in the next video in this series. I love you, and I hope you have a great day.
Who could stand against me? Freedom, I can feel the wind in my soul. Freedom, oh, freedom is my anthem.